Okay.
Hello, boys and girls. Miss Carol, Miss Donna back again. Um, we're excited to be doing this for you. I hope you've had a good last week. I hope you took my advice and spent one day maybe saying, Mom, Dad, Grandma, Grandpa, what can I do for you today? And I hope you've been working on those 12 sons of Jacob as well, because our story is just going to continue with that, shall we call it a saga? That means a long, drawn out story, but that's what's about to happen. Because now that Jacob is back home in Canaan, we're going to find out what happens with his 12 sons as they grow up and become men. Now, we know that Isaac was still alive when Jacob got back home. And he eventually died, and I believe he was 180 years old when he died. So Esau and Jacob, who were still, they made an agreement and they hugged, so they forgave one another. So they buried their father, and they buried him in the same cave or tomb that Abraham bought for Sarah, and then Abraham's sons Ishmael and Isaac buried him there, and now Isaac is buried in that same cave. So Jacob continues his life, and his older sons, well, they're men now. Joseph is still young. When we first come back into the story, Joseph is now a teenager. He's 17. I bet you know some kids that are 17 years old, probably looking forward to becoming seniors in high school, their last year in high school. And 17-year-olds are not grown up yet, right? And they still need a lot of help from mom and dad to make good decisions. So that's how old Joseph is. And we find out that Jacob has a favorite son. You know, you would think that Jacob would remember how hurtful it was when he was growing up that his dad had Esau for his favorite and his mom had him for her favorite. So we know how that turned out. That didn't work out well. But here Jacob is doing it all over again with his own son. And Joseph's younger brother, Benjamin, also born from Rachel, if you remember. He is too young to really, we don't know how old he was, but the older 10 boys, his half-brothers, they don't like Joseph at all because they know he's dad's favorite. So they're jealous. And to make things even worse, Jacob makes a very special coat and gives it to Joseph. Now this coat, it was very, very beautiful and had many colors to it. Something you might give to your oldest son, but certainly Joseph isn't the oldest, right? So he gives him this special coat. Now, from the looks of those brothers, do they look very happy to you? I mean, I think if they weren't jealous before, how do you think they're going to feel now? He's wearing a special coat. They didn't get a special coat. And the Bible says that they hated him so much they couldn't even say one kind word to him. Can you imagine? You've got 10 brothers that won't even say a nice word to you. That's sad, isn't it? On top of that, we find out that Joseph went out with his brothers and was helping take care of the sheep one time. And the Bible doesn't tell us what his brothers did, but they acted in a way that wouldn't have been pleasing to their father somehow. And Joseph goes home and he tells his dad what happened. Oh boy, now they're really mad at him. Has anybody ever called you a tattletale before? Well, Jacob probably thought Joseph did the right thing by coming and telling him that his brothers acted badly. But his brothers didn't think Joseph did the right thing by doing that. So now they really are mad at him. Well, that's not even the worst part of it. So now Joseph has a dream, and God's giving him these dreams. And those dreams were really special to Joseph, but also he probably, his father Jacob had a dream too. Do you remember what that dream was? A ladder that went up to heaven. So these dreams meant a lot to Joseph, but he didn't understand at the time what they meant. But he couldn't wait to tell somebody, so he tells his brothers. You're not going to believe it, but I had a dream. And we were out in the field gathering bundles of wheat. And all of a sudden, my bundle stood up straight, and the other bundles bowed down to my bundle. And then I had another dream, and it was about the sun and the moon and 11 stars. And all of them bowed down to me. Well, what do you think his brothers thought about that dream? They said, wait a minute here. Are you trying to tell us that you think you're going to rule over us someday? Well, he even told his father Jacob, and his father Jacob said, son, are you saying that your mother and I are going to bow down before you someday? But Jacob did keep this in his mind, thinking, I had a dream once like that. Maybe this dream is from God. But do you think his brothers cared where that dream came from? No, they hated him all the more. That's what the Bible says. And do we think maybe, I don't know, Joseph, remember, he's just 17. And maybe it wasn't the smartest thing in the world to do, to tell his brothers that dream. But he did. Did he do it was he bragging when he told it? The Bible doesn't say that, and I'm not sure he was trying to brag. But it was just so special, he wanted to share it. But at any rate, it didn't help him any, did it? Now they're really, really mad at him. And one day, and you know what? After that first time when he was watching sheep, the Bible doesn't mention that Joseph ever had to go watch the sheep again. I mean, after all, he's got this beautiful robe on now, right? You wouldn't want to go out and watch the sheep in your beautiful robe. But his father one day told him, he said, your brothers are out. They've traveled to Shechem from here, and that's at least 2 days' walk. And I'm a little worried. I want to make sure they're doing okay. So I'm wondering, would you be willing to go check on them for me? Now, I don't know about you, but if I were Joseph, I'd be thinking, if I go by myself and walk all the way where they are, as much as they hate me, Dad's not going to be able to watch over me. He's not going to protect me. If they decide to do something mean, I won't have anybody there on my side. Where Joseph might have thought these things, but you know what he said to his dad? Okay, I'll go. He was obeying his dad, even though I'm sure he was a little worried about that. But he did what his dad said, so he says, okay. And when he gets to Shechem, he's looking everywhere. He's going through all the fields. He's looking around. His brothers are nowhere. He cannot find them. And a man sees Joseph wandering around and says, can I help you? Are you looking for something? And he said, yeah, I'm looking for my brothers. They have my dad's sheep somewhere, and they were supposed to be here. And he said, oh, I know who you're talking about. I heard them, and they said they were going to travel to another town, Dothan, and that's where I bet you'll find them. Now, Joseph could have said, whew, thank goodness they're not here. I'll go home and tell Dad, nope, Dad, they weren't there. They weren't there. They went somewhere else. So, But no, he not only did what his dad said, but he went that extra mile and decided, well, I haven't found him yet, so I'm just going to keep going till I do. Now, remember, he's got that coat on, right? And from far away, his brothers see someone coming, and they knew immediately it was Joseph. How'd they know? That coat stood out, like my mama would have said, like a sore thumb. It stood out more. They could see him coming. Now, they didn't go, hooray, Joseph's here. Oh, no. No, they said, look, here comes that dreamer. And then they said, now's our chance. Let's kill him. Let's get rid of him once and for all. They said, I know what we're going to do. You see that big pit over there, that big cistern? That was used to collect water. It's in the desert, so whenever it rained, they could collect water in that cistern. But it was dry, and they said, we're just going to throw him down there in that pit. Let's just do that. Yeah, and then we'll kill him, right? Well, when he comes up there, that's what they do. They jerk his coat off of him, and they throw him down in the pit. I don't think he thought that was what was going to happen when he met his brothers. He might have been a little bit worried, but I don't think he thought that was going to happen. And then the older brother, do you remember the oldest son? Do you remember what his name was? Reuben. He's the oldest. Now Reuben says, wait a minute, guys, just wait a minute. Let's think about this. Let's don't kill him, because then the rest of our lives we're going to have to think about how we killed our brother. So let's don't do that. Let's just throw him down in this pit, and it's the desert after all. Let's just leave him there. He'll eventually die, and then it won't be that we actually killed him. And the brothers said, well, okay. All right, that's okay. Now, what Reuben really had planned was he was going to go back later on, and he was going to rescue Joseph. He was going to pull him out of the pit and secretly take him back home to their father, to Jacob. But did he do that because he loved Joseph, or because he liked him better than the other brothers? Probably not. The Bible doesn't tell us, but I have a feeling he did it because he was the oldest son. Why would that matter? Well, think about it. The oldest person, the oldest child in your family, are they the ones that usually have the most responsibility? And maybe they have the most chores to do, or maybe your mom and dad expect a little bit more from them because they're the oldest, and maybe they're supposed to be an example to you. Maybe you're the oldest, and you know what that's like. And sometimes if you're left in charge and bad things happen, who's going to get blamed for that? Probably you. Why weren't you watching? Why didn't you stop that? So Reuben is probably more or less thinking, if something happens to Joseph, Dad's going to blame me for it because I'm the oldest. I should have stopped it. That's probably what he's thinking. But his plan is to go back and rescue him. Now, the Bible doesn't tell us what happened to Reuben, but I have a feeling it was his turn to go out into the field and watch the sheep. And while he's there, his brothers sit down to a meal. They're brothers out there in a pit. And later on in Genesis, we find out that the brothers are admitting that while they're eating that meal, Joseph is in that pit crying and begging and pleading for them to come and rescue him. How sad and how cruel that they hear him doing that and they just keep on eating like nothing's happened. That's really cruel, isn't it? While they were eating, though, some traders came along, and these are people that carried spices and other goods from one place to another, like a walking store, sort of, and then they sell their things, and then they come back and get more. And they were on their way to Egypt, and they were actually Ishmaelites. We know Ishmael, don't we? Because Ishmael was also Abraham's son by Hagar. And so these are his children, grandchildren. And so they're on their way to Egypt to sell their goods. Now the brothers come up with a plan. Here's what we can do. Instead of killing our brother, because what are we going to get from that? Nothing. Why don't we sell him as a slave to the Ishmaelites? We'll get some money out of the deal, and he'll be out our hair forever. That sounds like a good plan, doesn't it? So that's what they do. They go to these Ishmaelites and they said, hey, we've got a young a young man here, would you like to buy him from us for your slave? And they said, okay, sure. We'll give you 20 pieces of silver for him. Oh, that's good. We can take this silver and we can divide it among ourselves. Yeah, that sounds good. And so they take Joseph away. And now the brothers are thinking, woohoo, we got us some money. Uh-oh, what are we going to tell Dad? Okay, here's what we can do. Here's what we'll do. We're going to go and we're going to kill a goat, and we're going to take the blood from that goat and we're going to put it all over this beautiful coat of his. And then we're going to take it to Dad and we're going to say, whose is this, you know? And that way we're not going to be lying to Dad exactly. We're just not going to exactly tell the whole truth, but we're not going to lie, right? We're just going to let him think that's what happened. Now, about this time, Reuben comes back, and he goes to the pit, and Joseph is gone. And he's like, what have you done? What did you do with him? And they said, we sold him. We got 20 pieces of silver here. We sold him to some traders, took him off as a slave. What? What are you thinking? Nah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We got this plan. We got a plan. Don't even worry about it. We know what we're doing. So they kill that goat. They put the blood all over Joseph's coat. And then they take it back to their dad. Now this is what they say. Father, here's this coat. Does it belong to your son? They don't say, does it belong to our brother? They say, does it belong to your son? Now, Jacob looks at that coat. He knows it's Joseph's. And blood all over it. Well, you know what he thinks? He thinks on his way to find his brothers, a wild animal came up there. And he said, oh no, a wild animal has eaten him. Oh no, not my son Joseph. He's been eaten by a wild animal. Oh no, I cannot believe this. This is awful. And he takes his clothes and he takes off his good clothes and puts on these scratchy clothes called sackcloth. And he says, I will never ever stop crying for my son Joseph. For the rest of my life, I'm going to spend it mourning and crying for my son Joseph. Let's go back a little bit in time and let's think about something. Now, the brothers used a goat and the blood from a goat to trick their father, to deceive him. But wait a minute, let's think. Did Jacob and his mother Rebecca use a goat to trick his dad Isaac? Yeah. You remember they killed a goat? She cooked it up for him to think it was Esau's wild animal that he had killed. And what did they do with the goat skin? Did they put it on Jacob so he would feel like his brother Esau? Now, isn't that something? He tricks his own dad with a goat, and his sons trick him. Sometimes, God always forgives us when we do bad things, when we ask him to forgive us. But he still lets us, sometimes we still have to pay for that. We have to pay the consequences. And now the same things happened to Jacob that he did with his father. Sad, huh? Very sad. And all of this came about because of one word. One word. Do you know what that word is? Jealousy. Jealousy. And God tells us that that's a sin. We should never be jealous of anybody. God gives us plenty. He gives us all we need, and we should never be jealous of what somebody else has. We should never say, I wish I had that. I want that. We should not say that. We should all be happy that they shouldn't have been jealous of that coat that Jacob had given Joseph, but they were. And I think something those brothers didn't think about when they thought about tricking and, no, they didn't actually lie to their father, did they? Well, yeah, deceive him a little bit, trick him. But did they say that a wild animal killed him? No, they just let Jacob think that's what happened. But for the next 20 years, Jacob is going to cry and mourn his son, and I don't think his brothers thought that they would have to watch their dad do that for 20 years, because every time they saw him do that, what do you think they were reminded of? That they did a very bad thing. So every day of their lives for the next 20 years, they're going to have to remember that. Saga. Now, what's going to happen with Joseph? You're going to have to tune in next week to find that out. All right, we're going to have to find out what happens. He's been sold as a slave, headed to Egypt. And we'll find out. Do you think God's going to protect him? We'll find out next week. I hope that you have been working on those sons of Jacob. If you remember, we start off with Reuben and Simeon and Levi. Any song you find is fine with me. Songs are better. Songs help you to remember, but I hope you're working on that. I hope you're working on Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Zebulun, Issachar, Asher, Naphtali, Dan, Joseph, Gad, and Benjamin. And we're going to find out more about this story, and it gets better next week. We love you, and we hope that you stay safe and you keep listening to Mom and Dad and obeying, doing what God wants. Bye-bye.